The Grazie Dio School of Business and Management at Pepperdine University proudly presents the Dean's Executive Leadership Series. This podcast invites top business practitioners and thought leaders to share their view on the real world of business.
Well, I want to welcome all of you that are in the room, and then we also have folks that are joining us by webcast from across the United States and around the world. This is a very, very special evening for us. It is not only another installment of our Dean's Executive Leadership Series at the Grazie Dio School, but we are also partnering with Beta Gamma Sigma, the international honorary for business schools who are accredited by AACSB, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the founding of Beta Gamma Sigma. And tonight is particularly significant because tonight, February 19th, is the actual 100th anniversary. So this is quite an event tonight. I'm going to do a few introductions of some folks that are with us from Beta Gamma Sigma, but before I do that, I want to mention just a couple of things going on at the school and to remind you of them before we sort of get on with our program for the evening. We will have our next installment of the Dean's Executive Leadership Series on March 12th in Orange County at the Center Club in Costa Mesa. We'll actually be featuring one of our own alumni, Dan Sanders, at that. He is he's in charge of the Southern California division of Albertsons and has been an important executive, has written a book or two that are bestsellers and will be an excellent addition to our leadership series in March. We also are hosting our George Awards on April 12th. Those are awards we give annually in the business school to honor students and alumni who exemplify the values of the business school and who exemplify the entrepreneurial spirit of George Grazie Dio, for whom we are named. So we hope that you'll join us for that and be a part of that. And then just next week, our Black Alumni Council is hosting an event on February 28th that is looking at the portrayal of African Americans in film. And we will have the producer of Django Unchained, Reginald Hudland, at that event. So that will be a really special evening and hope that you can join us for that. And then the last thing I want to mention, while we have sort of a national and international audience, we're also thrilled this spring at the Grazie Dio School to launch our online MBA program. We had a really exceptional class start in January, a high-quality group of students that represent Southern California, several states outside the United States, and we actually have a military officer from Japan who's joined us in that class. So we're thrilled about that opportunity for people to experience a Grazie Dio and Pepperdine education from all around the world in a very high-quality way, and look forward to seeing that grow and develop. And actually, Jim, we're looking forward to inducting our first Beta Gamma Sigma members from that first online class in about 2 years. So we'll look forward to that as well. Well, we do have some special guests with us today from Beta Gamma Sigma. I want to introduce first, Beta Gamma Sigma has alumni chapters around the world, and we actually have two of the chapter presidents with us this evening. We have Jim Olds, who is the president of the Los Angeles Beta Gamma Sigma chapter. So Jim, would you stand up so everyone can see you? Thank you. And Mario Villanovich, who gets one of the prizes for coming from the longest distance, and he is the chapter president. He is a chapter president from New Zealand. So he joined us here. He was going to be here on business next week, so came in a bit early for this. Beta Gamma Sigma is a particularly special organization to me. I do sit on the board of Beta Gamma Sigma, but I actually joined Beta Gamma Sigma as a junior in college. I attended one of their student leadership programs when I was in college as an undergraduate. I was one of the chapter sponsors when I was at Baylor University before coming here, and now, of course, have the privilege to be a part of the board. So Beta Gamma Sigma has been a part of my life for more years than I'm going to tell you, but love it because of what it stands for and what it represents for what we do in business schools to honor kind of the best and brightest that we produce through our program. So before I introduce our speaker, I'm going to ask Jim Phelan to come forward. Jim is the executive director of Beta Gamma Sigma, and he wants to just share a few words with you as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of Beta Gamma Sigma this evening. Jim.
Well, a lot of people have said the weather here isn't very nice this evening, but I'm sure it's a lot nicer than it was on February 19th, 1913, when faculty from the University of California, the University of Illinois, and the University of Wisconsin, Madison, met in Madison, Wisconsin. I imagine that was a very chilly day. When Beta Gamma Sigma had its 75th anniversary, we went back to Madison. And I kept saying, why can't we go to University of California, Berkeley? But it was probably about 20 degrees that day in Madison in 1988. But 25 years have passed, and now Beta Gamma Sigma is really pleased to be able to celebrate its centennial anniversary from 3 chapters in 1913 to 530 collegiate chapters today, from chapters just in the U.S. to chapters in 21 countries and territories today. And we also have 27 alumni chapters, most of them located in the U.S., but as you heard, we have New Zealand, Spain, Germany, Hong Kong, so Beta Gamma Sigma continues to march on. Since its founding in 1913, Beta Gamma Sigma has inducted over 700,000 members, and it's the largest organization representing business school alumni in the world. We're pleased to have joining us this evening the Atlanta, the Charlotte, the St. Louis, and the Houston area alumni chapters. And we also have chapters at Georgia State University, University of Houston Downtown, University of Portland, Radford University, St. Louis University, and Valdosta State University participating as well via webcast. The Beta Gamma Sigma event that we're participating this evening is our Meet the Leaders of Business. We're very pleased to have Mr. Burnison as one of those exemplars of outstanding business leadership, and we're pleased to be able to partner here at the Dean's Executive Leadership Series. So we're pleased to have this time with you. In front of you, there should be a Beta Gamma Sigma Centennial Key. We hope each of you will wear it proudly and remember fondly 100 years of recognizing business excellence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In addition to webcasting this event live tonight, we are also capturing it, so we will post it on our website. It will also be available through Beta Gamma Sigma. And then Gary and I actually did an interview prior to this where we went into a little bit of detail on some issues, particularly around ethics and ethical leadership. And that will also be available through an audio podcast as well as a video cast in a few weeks up on both of the websites as well. So you'll have lots of opportunity to follow up on this and to listen to Gary again if you'd like to hear more about what he has to say. But it is really my privilege now to introduce our speaker tonight, Gary Burnison. He is the CEO of Korn Ferry International. He went to Korn Ferry in 2002 as their CFO, and then he's been CEO since 2007. Gary actually is an accountant by training. He started after graduating from USC, was at Peat Marwick Mitchell, which tells you how old we all are that actually remember who Peat Marwick Mitchell is in the accounting firms, right? But had a wonderful career on that side of the world. He did some investment banking work, some technology consulting before going to Korn Ferry. So he has a very diverse and broad background. He's written 2 best-selling books, one that's called The 12 Absolutes of Leadership, and the other, No Fear of Failure, real stories of how leaders deal with risk and change. So he thinks a lot about leadership and reflects deeply on what it means and what it takes to be an effective leader. And he'll share some of that wisdom with us tonight. He was born in Southern California, but grew up in Kansas, so he's got Midwestern roots before coming back here to go to school. His wife is actually a graduate of the undergraduate college, Seaver College, here at Pepperdine University. And as busy as he is running Korn Ferry, they actually have 5 children as well, all at home. So he has a very busy life, both personally and professionally. But it is a privilege to bring Gary Burnison to you this evening. So Gary, welcome. We're glad to have you with us.
Okay, I'm not going to do the Paul Ryan thing here with the water. Thank you, Dean Livingstone and Beta Gamma Sigma. Thank you for being here. You know what the average life of a CEO is today? Not long. Not long. So this is my 7th year. So there's a story I'll never forget when I was promoted to CEO. So there's a big company, goes through succession, and as the CEO is leaving the building, new CEO walks in, says, look, if you ever get into trouble, just check the drawer in the desk, and there's 3 envelopes. So, okay. CEO starts working, 6 months go by, and sales start to go like this. And he thinks, oh my God, I got to remember what he said. I'm going to go to the desk drawer. So he goes to the desk drawer, opens it up, and there's an envelope, and it says, open this one first. So he opens it up, and it says, blame your predecessor. So that's what he did. Conference call with analysts. You know what, this is the other guy's problem. Sure enough, it worked. Sales start to go up. 6 months go by. Uh-oh, we're in trouble. Sales start to plummet. Wow, it worked the first time. I'm going to do this again, right? Goes back, opens up the drawer. Another envelope. It says, this is the second one. So he opens it up, and it says, restructure. So he restructures a company. Great things. Stock starts to skyrocket. Oh boy, 6 months later, we got a problem. Sales start to decline. Well, what are you going to do, right? You go in that desk drawer, you open it up. He pulls it up, and it says, prepare 3 new envelopes. Well, I think that's a little bit what leadership's about. I mean, you have to be reconciled to the fact that failure is inevitable. And in fact, failure is failing to fail. If I ask this group right here, how many people have been to a wedding in the last year? Show of hands. Okay. How many people have been to a funeral? So I've got this wedding to funeral ratio. And when it goes below 1, you're probably on the back 9. Okay? But imagine that this was a wedding. And you've got to get up here. And without bringing down the party at all, you've got to point out the facts of life. But your goal as a CEO, your goal as a leader is not only to find that silver lining, to punch through the opening in the sky when it's really cloudy, but it's also to anticipate and to point out the darker sides. The economy may turn, sales could go down, et cetera, et cetera. So if you were up here in front of the wedding, we're all partying, everybody's had a couple cocktails, you've got to get up and explain to the bride and groom the facts of life. And the fact is that guess what in the United States today? What's the divorce rate? 50%, right? So you've got to get up without bringing down the mood that guess what? Chances are 1 out of 2, it's not going to be happily ever after. And you got to do that to anticipate without bringing down the party. Now, how about the other side? You're at a funeral. And in fact, this happened to me. So it was a friend of mine who passed away, and he was 52. And I walk into the sanctuary, and I was supposed to give the closing eulogy. And there's a couple hundred people there. And everybody's crying. There's Kleenex. And what am I going to say? And so what happened in that funeral was actually quite extraordinary. His son got up, his son was 19, and spoke about his dad, spoke about Brent. Brent didn't have a lot of money. Brent sold insurance for a livelihood. But this kid talked about his dad in such glowing terms. And yet you can really judge a father by looking into the eyes of his son. And I saw it. But what was more amazing than what this 19-year-old boy said was what happened afterward. Afterward, one by one, by one, ended up being 33 people. 33 people got up and spoke about Brent. How Brent had brought a family into his house. How Brent had loaned his car. How Brent had given some money. He didn't have any money. One by one by one. And what happened at that end of that funeral, I'll never forget it, is the mood was totally elevated. And I can remember putting my hand on the casket with a smile on my face. And so those tears of joy became smiles of happiness. Why? Because Brent changed people's lives. That's what leadership's about. Leadership is about making others believe, then enabling that belief to become reality. It's that simple. What you find as a CEO, and I never thought out I would never set out setting this as a goal for myself, but what you find in the corporate world is there's this pyramid. And you go up in that pyramid and you suddenly reach the top. And the strangest thing happens. You look around and nobody's there. Very lonely, but you can't make it isolating. And what happens all too often is that when you start at the bottom of the pyramid, your view is broad. And as you work your way up, you have to fight against it becoming narrower. But what happens also is there's another pyramid that inverses itself upon you. And that pyramid is full of all sorts of distractions, media, stockholders, a little thing called the board of directors, TV. And you are at the intersection of that pyramid. And what happens is people stop looking at you like you're a person. You become a function. So you're no longer Sam the CFO, you're now Sam the CEO. And you don't speak for yourself, you speak for the entire organization. And what happens is people don't tell you the truth. That's one consequence. That there's truly not freedom of speech unless there's economic security. And that may sound strange, may sound simple, but let me tell you, it is absolutely, absolutely true. And so you stop being a person, you are a function. People are looking to you, not only to punch through the opening in the sky, but to provide economic security for them and their family. And so to navigate all that, you got to do two things. You got to focus on two things. And you can't get caught up in the distraction with the pyramid above you, that's for sure. And those two things are your customers and your employees. That's what you have to have absolute laser focus on. Because at the end of the day, performance is the equalizer. And so you can do all the politicking you want, but if you don't have that performance, you won't succeed. You won't last longer than 3.5 years, which is the statistical average today. So you have to have constantly this outside-in view of the organization from customers, and also the inside-out view. What are employees thinking? What's on their minds? And that's really where you've got to spend your time, on those two things. Now, as a leader, as a CEO, certainly you have to do many things. You have to set forth a purpose. Everybody acts in self-interest, right? That's human behavior. But what you have to do is to take that self-interest and make it shared interest, which is not easy to do. I recently interviewed somebody out of the Obama cabinet, a name you would know. And I said, so what was it like being in Washington for those years? What was the learning? And he said, Gary, it's the strangest thing. The people on the outside, they just want to be on the inside, and the people on the inside don't want to be on the outside, and that's it. And that's true, right? People act in self-interest. So what you have to do is to make sure that you establish that common purpose, that why a company is in business. And I don't mean to make money, and I don't mean shareholder value. Those are outcomes. I mean why you are in business. Whether you're Under Armour to make better athletes, our company to change people's lives, it's that why that really gets people going. So you not only have to do the purpose, you have to set forth a strategy, clearly. You got to put in systems and processes to monitor how you're doing along this journey. You got to empower, inspire. You got to reward and celebrate. But at the end of the day, you know, it's been said a CEO is in the what business and the how business. At the end of the day, you're in the people business. That's the business that you're in. Because even in this age of instant gratification, total connectivity, I mean, who would have guessed that now you can, I was raised in a small town in Kansas. I mean, you can actually talk to just about anybody on this planet anytime. You can even send a picture that self-destructs in 7 seconds. I mean, what's that? I thought the purpose was to remember moments lived, not to destroy those. And, soon we're going to be wearing computers on our watch, right here, iWatch, right? Maybe on our glasses. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But despite all that technology, people haven't been disintermediated. And people make businesses great. And that's what you're in as the CEO. Not only the what, setting forth that purpose and the strategy and systems and empowering and inspiring, rewarding and celebrating, but you're in that people business. So it's not only what you do, but it's also how you do it. And that's around anticipating, navigating, communicating, listening, learning, and leading. There was a remote outpost somewhere in the northern Dakotas, and it was fall. And the leader of this outpost wasn't schooled in the old ways of telling whether the winter was going to be cold or not. So he gets this bright idea. He's going to go down to the payphone. It's in the fall. Calls the National Weather Service. Hey, what's the weather going to be? Well, I think it's going to be cold. Okay. Goes back to the outpost, tells all the villagers, you know what? You need to gather up some firewood. They do that. Week goes by. Says, wow, I'm going to do the same thing. Goes down to the payphone, gets on the phone, calls the weatherman. Hey, what's the winter going to be like? Oh, it's going to be really cold. Goes back to the outpost. Says, listen, you need to gather all the sticks, everything you can. Week goes by. Says, hey, this is working pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing. Goes the weatherman. Hey, what's it going to be? Oh, this is going to be brutal. It's going to be the worst winter on record. Oh, yeah? How do you know that? Asked this leader. Says, well, I don't know, but these guys at the outpost, they're sure collecting a lot of firewood. And so for a CEO, for a leader, you can't be a manager of the inevitable, right? So it's not just setting a strategy once a year, but it's also being able to anticipate. to tap Google Earth all the time, to look at where you are in the journey at 38,000 feet and to say, okay, this is where we are, and to reward and celebrate. But at the end of the day, what I've found is what it really comes down to is communicating, listening, learning, and then leading. The best story around listening is a new CEO. It's a turnaround situation. And this guy has been tasked with, shaking things up. Sales have stalled. We got to turn things around here. Board hires him, goes to the first town hall meeting with employees, and he thinks to himself, boy, I'm going to really, there's a new sheriff in town. I'm going to really tell these people what I think. So he gets up like this, and he starts talking, and he sees a guy way in the corner, and the guy doesn't look like anybody else in the audience. He's got a T-shirt and jeans and baseball cap turned sideways and not really paying attention, kind of looking down. CEO's got a bright idea. I'm going to show people who's boss. So he goes over to this guy and he says, hey, how much do you make a week? He says, $400. CEO reaches into his pocket and says, here's $1,000, you're fired. Goes back and gives his State of the Union on how things are going to change. Pretty happy with himself. After the meeting, goes to one of his lieutenants and says, hey, how'd you like that? Did I show people who boss was? Huh? Hey, by the way, who was that guy over there? Oh, that was Johnny, the pizza delivery guy. He was delivering pizzas for the party afterward. When it comes to listening, you got to know who the audience is, right? And what you have to break is, I guarantee you, when I walked up here, all of you had formed an impression of me within the first 10 seconds. Absolutely. No question about it. That's human behavior, right? But as a CEO, as a leader, you have to fight that bias off. And in fact, you've got to create an environment where people will tell you the truth, where you do welcome the truth, where there's no fear of retribution. And one of the hardest things to do is listen. Not to hear. Here's a physical ability. But the cognitive ability to actually listen, to ask questions, to let there be moments of silence, to not speak first, but to speak last. That's really tough to do. But that's actually where it starts, is by making this connection with employees, with customers, through listening. The other thing is learning. What we found at Korn Ferry is that the number one predictor of executive success, and we've assessed literally millions of executives. Today, half our business is in leadership consulting, but the other half is in executive recruiting. And so every hour on the hour, we put somebody in a job that makes $500,000 a year. Every hour. We're the biggest. So we've looked at a lot of executives, and what we found, the number one predictor, is learning agility. Is that ability to know what to do when you don't know what to do. And what we've seen in leaders across any industry is that those that rise the fastest, have the highest trajectory, are those that have this insatiable appetite to learn, to read, to ask questions. And if you think about that, that makes sense. Because no matter how close you are to the CEO, could have been the COO, CFO, you have no idea. until you are in that chair. That's why the life expectancy is less than 5 years. Because today, like society, CEOs are not measured in years, they're measured in quarters. That's just the reality. And so if you don't have that ability to change, to be nimble, to be creative, to process complexity, yet distill that down to simplicity, you're not going to succeed. And then the final thing is leading. And that is around this concept of being all in all the time. And the fact is that as a leader, as a CEO, there's no such thing as a bad day. I cannot have a bad day. Because whatever I project is what the organization is going to feel. Guess what? If I'm a little down, then what's Benjamin going to think? And what's Benjamin going to say to Sean? Boy, Gary was really down. Why is that? God, I don't know. Maybe this acquisition he just made is going really bad. Oh, yeah? Well, I hear the board's unhappy with Gary. I hear shareholders, right? That's the way it is. That's absolutely the way it is. So what you have to be able to do is to compartmentalize, right? And so I'd say a really simple thing, quote, being a leader, it goes back to this funeral story. And you're going to think this is crazy. But I would challenge you that if you just do one thing and try it, and that is with any colleague, with any employee, challenge yourself that after that interaction, does that colleague feel better after that conversation than before? Just try that. Try it every day. And what you'd find is that it's incredibly taxing. Incredibly taxing. Remember, whether you're firing somebody has stage 4 cancer, somebody did something illegal you had to fire, somebody is not performing. I mean, all those are real situations. And in each one of those, that conversation, that person's going to need to feel better. That's what it's about. And so this concept of a bad day, of a gray day, it just doesn't exist. You cannot do that. You have to radiate what you want the organization to be. There's no choice. What I found in the 6 years as CEO is that it's really not about what we offer as a service. It's not about the products that we make. It's really not about the technology that we develop. It's really all about the people. And the truth is, money's important, but it's never number one. Never number one. Any kind of engagement survey. Now, if I ask a question here and show hands, how many people here think they're overpaid? I guarantee you no hand's going to go up. Maybe mine. But if I ask the other question, how many of you think you're underpaid? I guarantee you almost every hand in this room is going to go up. Look, it's in the top 5. It's important. Clearly, how somebody is paid is probably a good indication of how they behave. So I'm not naive. I've got 3,500 people in 40 countries. But let me tell you, that's not the thing that gets people up at 4:30 without the alarm clock. That's not the thing that puts them to bed at 11:30 looking for the next day. People want to be loved. People want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. People want to be developed. They want to be stimulated. They want to be on a winning team. That's what gets people going. The money's the money. right? It's not a durable commodity. And if people join the organization for money, they're probably going to leave for money. But as a CEO, that's what you got to try to do, is get people to wake up at 4:30 without the alarm clock. And then during the day, getting them rowing in the same direction at the same speed. Because you've got hundreds of people making thousands of decisions every day. You're not going to be there. So how do you ensure that there's some rhythm to that? Well, you got to set forth this purpose. You got to set the why. Something that's bigger than the individual that everybody's rowing towards. You've got to paint the out of bounds lines. You got to paint the left line and the right line. But everything else, you've got to empower people around that common purpose. You know, I've had the privilege of meeting some fascinating people. Carlos Slim, the world's richest man. President Fox of Mexico, who was in 10 Downing Street this summer. The CEO of, you name it, Cirque du Soleil, Pepsi. I could go on and on. But one of the most interesting people that we've ever met as an organization was a guy you've never, ever heard of. And that's a gentleman by the name of John Mckesson. John Mckesson is a high school football coach in Summerville, South Carolina, small town. John Mckesson started coaching football when Harry Truman was president. Okay? He's been coaching a while. Well, today, Mckesson has 603 wins. 603 wins. So you think about Bear Bryant, you think about Don Shula, this guy puts them to shame. Almost twice as many wins as Bear Bryant had. In town, going to lunch, he has a ring. And at the time we saw him, he had 576 wins. Today he's got 603. And the ring has the number 500 on it. And the town gave him that ring to celebrate the 500th win. So he's in the town. Jeweler sees him, excited. Hey, coach, I'm working on it. I'm working on this ring with 600 on it. And Mckesson just calmly turns to him and says, you know what? I just want one with 577. That's what it's about, right? This ability to throttle back and forth, to navigate, to anticipate, to define the horizon, to make sure that organization is headed towards this common purpose that's bigger than they are individually, but also to check where you are all the time, one at a time.